This week in the enterprise security news, Splunk buys a SaaS startup, Stage Fund buys an Israeli cybersecurity firm, Trustwave, the platform, brings more visibility and control to cloud security, and a whole lot more. In our second segment, Steve Laubenstein, the VP of Cyber Threat Products Group at Core Security, will talk about elements of an effective penetration testing program in an interconnected world. In our final segment, we air two pre-recorded interviews from Black Hat 2019, Dan Cornell from the Denim Group and Bryson Bort from Scythe, who was wearing a unicorn. Just throwing that out there. You might want to check the video out. Yuri Bulagin from Eclipsium is also in this episode as well. So stay tuned for all that and more on Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Cloud-first development helps your business move fast, but misconfigurations and blind spots are part of the deal. App and dev teams get the flexibility, while security teams are left with the stress of managing new risk using legacy workflows. ExtraHop RevealX provides cloud-native network detection and response, backed by cloud-scale machine learning that helps you spot threats and unify processes across hybrid environments. Learn more at extrahop.com/Security Weekly. That's extrahop.com/Security Weekly. Networks are becoming increasingly complex and fragmented, and digital transformation and DevOps are driving an explosion in network connectivity changes. With each new network connection, cyber attackers may gain another opening to breach or traverse the network. At Tufin, they've pioneered a policy-based approach to network security management using automation and analytics. As a result, you can make network changes in minutes instead of days, reliably and securely. To learn more about Tufin, the security policy company, go to securityweekly.com/Tufin and sign up for a free evaluation. By the end of 2020, 99% of exploited vulnerabilities will be publicly disclosed and known to IT system admins. The consequences of that fact means the burglar will already be in your house because you left the front door wide open. By failing to patch known vulnerabilities, how can you keep the threat actors out? Through cloud-based automation, Automox enables you to slam the door on unpatched OS and third-party vulnerabilities across your entire Windows, Mac, and Linux infrastructure. Take advantage of a free trial with Automox to not only see the vulnerability status of your infrastructure, but do something about it within minutes. Start automating the fundamentals of cyber hygiene at securityweekly.com/Automox. That's securityweekly.com/Automox. Welcome to episode 153 of Enterprise Security Weekly for September 11th, 2019. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. It's Wednesday already. Holy cow.
It is Wednesday. Yes, it is. And September 11th, nonetheless. We can't forget. I was watching the news in the doctor's office this morning. So it's weird how everyone remembers where you were that day. If you look on social media, a lot of people post, like, you remember that exact moment when it happened. So announcements for this episode. We are excited about the Security Weekly webcast program. We've got one today with Logarithm, and we do lots of webcasts with our sponsors where you get to hear about kind of the state of various technologies, maybe some open source tools and techniques, and then hear how our fine sponsors are able to solve problems, often accompanied by live demos. So it's a great opportunity for our audience to learn some stuff and learn how the vendor actually solves your problems. You can earn CPEs for our webcast program. We're partnering with ISC Squared, so you can go to securityweekly.com/webcast. There's also one coming up with SaltStack with a good friend, Mayhall, who Matt and I worked with at Tenable. So it's going to be a Tenable reunion party, actually, and SaltStack is the sponsor. If you missed any of our previous webcasts, you can go to securityweekly.com/on-demand. Security Weekly will also be at Hacker Halted in Atlanta, Georgia, October 10th through the 11th. I will be delivering one of the keynotes. Jeff Mann will be speaking. EC Council's offering our listeners a $100 discount to attend the two-day conference if you use the discount code HH19SW when you register, or go to securityweekly.com/Hacker Halted. And we're talking about the enterprise security news, which I posted very early this morning, Matt. So I'm assuming you had more time than ever.
I know. I was shocked.
Now
I'm
you're
like,
going to
wait.
expect that every time. I was up at like 5 a.m. this morning, though. So we'll see.
Usually I get the news like 15 minutes before the show, but I had plenty of time to review it today.
It's awesome. We talked about VMware buying Carbon Black on the last episode.
We did.
We didn't have a confirmation or an amount? Is that true?
No, we did.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we covered it.
That one's old news, so that one's been covered.
Okay, good. Moving on. Next story.
You want to start at the top? We can talk Splunk buys Omnition. So what's Omnition, right? It's this tracing functionality. It's an interesting concept and interesting technology. What it's doing is it's looking at the components of a transaction. If you think about a web application, you create a session and there's a transaction. There's a lot of little pieces that happen in between. And with microservices and containerization, sometimes it's hard to understand all the components of what's happening in that transaction because they're happening in different places.
Now, by transaction, Matt, and not specifically database transactions, although database transactions, but other types of transactions like between APIs or between containers and stuff?
Correct. Exactly. So I make a request to do a functionality, a get, a push, a whatever, a post. And then there's all these things that happen under that is a series of, I think they call them sessions. And they've created some interesting technology that gets embedded into the microservice. I think it's in the container itself. It's actually instrumentation that allows you to have that visibility across those different components in the application stack. And Splunk bought it to enhance, I think, some of the things they're trying to do on the application side to marry up with their app logging to also bring in the app tracing.
It sounds like great functionality for monitoring your web applications, which has always been problematic. And it's nice to see technologies come out that can allow us to do this, right? Because, I remember years ago, we're like, how do we get logs from the application? I'm like, well, if the developers aren't generating logs, not much I can do, right? And now we've moved forward so far, right? Signal Sciences and so many other vendors do a great job of giving this awesome telemetry about our applications.
Yeah, and I think the important thing for people to understand is how this works. And I'm a big believer of embedding instrumentation into the app to give us this kind of data.
Yep,
it is an instrumentation methodology, which means a library, a binary, a something that gets integrated into the application in order to give you that visibility. It's a similar approach that Layered Insight took when it came to container security, and you see other types of approaches. That's exactly what they're doing here.
It's awesome. Cymmetria has been actually bought by Stage Fund. Congrats to Gotti and team. Gotti sounds really excited about it too, that this was really an acquisition. I'm not sure, Matt, if it was private equity or not, but it sounds like they needed to really ramp up and grow in this very competitive field of deception, and this was a way for Gotti and team to be able to do that.
Yeah, this is an interesting acquisition. It is a private equity growth firm based here in Denver, Colorado, actually. Their sales and marketing, I think, were here. The R&D was over in Israel.
Yep.
But typically we've seen Israeli companies get acquired by other companies. We really haven't seen the private equity side of this happen with some of these Israeli-based companies. So this is an interesting acquisition, interesting one to watch.
Well, yeah, and I like it, too, because it's, Cymmetria is not integrating their technology with another security vendor. The private equity firm is going to allow them to grow and be a bigger player in the market, which I think is awesome. Gotti's been in the security industry forever, and they have great technology. So,
yeah, and obviously the Israeli guys are just brilliant. The knowledge that they have, the ability to turn that in technology. I did go out and look at Stage Fund because I wasn't familiar with them, even though they're local. This looks like one of their first security acquisitions. A lot of their other stuff is kind of more consumer and some other technology. This looked like the first one in the security space. So it looks like they're moving into some of the cybersecurity areas as well. So somebody for me to watch a little more locally because they might be doing some more interesting stuff.
And I like it. I think that's good news all around.
Yeah.
Trustwave is bringing more visibility and control to cloud security. What I find interesting, Matt, cloud security really is taking off. And it's funny because when we first started talking about cloud, everyone was talking about cloud security. But now I think it's taken this long. I don't know when we started to, when was the big, I think it was RSA, right? When everyone started talking about cloud and cloud security 10 years ago. Maybe that's just a guess. But when I think now it's more real than ever before, right? Because every business now has some, put SaaS, even SaaS aside for a moment, right? You've got some of your infrastructure and or applications or services, whatever it may be, somewhere in the cloud. So this is now relevant to everyone. And if you've got just a couple of things, you're probably looking at strategically putting more in the cloud and applying security to it. So I think we're at a really pivotal moment for cloud services, cloud infrastructure, and security, hence announcements from many vendors talking about supporting cloud security. And what does that mean? I know cloud security, right? What does it mean? Yeah. But it's many different shapes and forms.
Yeah. So this is at least 10 years old, because 10 years ago I was at Qualys having these conversations, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Qualys was one of the early cloud security vendors, right? They built their solution SaaS in the cloud first, and one of the pioneers in the space. And there's a lot of debates about cloud and cloud security and all these other things. Mm-hmm. Now, 10 years later, we've seen the momentum shift. I mean, the Gartner reports that we see about data center spending, server spending going down. You see cloud spending, SaaS spending going up. We are shifting. Whether people want it to happen or realize it's happening. And if you're going to survive in the space, you have to be able to address on-prem and cloud security and bring that together in a hybridized way to help your customers, because they're going to have infrastructure running in any and all of the above.
Yeah, and I've noticed it in our own technology, right, as my role as CTO. When I research things now, so many more roads lead to cloud services of some variety, right? Whether it's from Azure, whether it's from Google, whether it's from Amazon, all roads are leading to like how you want to solve your problem. Basically, there's probably 2 or 3 different cloud services that can help you solve your problem, right? Whether it's DNS, whether it's serverless functions, whether it's API gateways. Just more and more of my research, I'm like, it's all happening in the cloud now. And I think with a little more security than 10 years ago, right? A lot more focus, I should say, than 10 years ago on security.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this afternoon a little bit with on the webcast with Logarithm, right? Is we are seeing better capabilities in the cloud. We're seeing better scalability of solutions in the cloud. Mm-hmm. We still have some gaps we have to fill, but yeah, we're way more mature now in cloud security than we ever have been.
And so what is Trustwave's actual announcement? Now I got to remember what this article was saying.
It's about enhancements to their Fusion platform. It brings in lots of good buzzwords like data lakes and analytics and threat intelligence and stuff.
Orchestration, automation, and response.
Yeah.
I think it can be summarized as basically just more cloud support.
Correct.
Right.
More cloud support.
Shape Security had, I thought, an interesting blog post that I wanted to talk about in this show, Matt. And it was kind of a sensational post about, the war in cyberspace, that there are all these bots waging war against us. And I mean, bots have been a thing since there was the World Wide Web back in the day, in the late 90s, right? Bots have always been a thing. And yes, there are security concerns there. I believe they are more on the product security side rather than the infrastructure security side. Would you agree, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, there is an interesting overlap, I think, a little bit on the infrastructure side because of the sheer volume of what bots can do on the internet, Paul.
Denial of service attacks.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
One, right, attack that bots can wage against you. And infrastructure is going to be, traditional IT. You have to concern yourselves with that. But impersonating users is typically a product security issue. And that's where I think there is a lot more risk, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job with denial of service and volumetric attacks that bots would traditionally have done, and have a better control on that now. But there is still an infrastructure component, I think. But you're right. It's the impersonation of a user trying to gain access to a system, looking like a real user, credential stuffing, some of the other things that are more of product security, especially when we're talking about web and mobile, because I think both are potential impact points for some of these attacks. But yeah, now you have to think about, how do you authenticate users and verify that it's a real user versus a bot user, and somebody's trying to just do a credential stuffing attack or something like that into your application.
Yeah, I think it's also in the article, someone alludes to it that, machine learning is on both sides, right? And validating that the user is really the user is the challenge for your application, right? And that's on both sides, in the enterprise infrastructure and on the product side, right?
It has been, I think, forever.
Yeah, I think,
and it only gets more important when we are users distributed all over the planet, interacting with applications that are distributed all over the planet.
Right. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting article from the folks at Shape, who offer solutions for bot detection, along with many other players in the market. Yeah,
we've talked to a few on this show.
Yeah, and I think if you've got a production application, you'd need one of these solutions. And I've talked to folks actually that are like, I was looking into a way to solve some of the problems that bots pose and writing something ourselves, and then they heard about some of the solutions on our show, and they're like, oh, that saved me so much time. So it definitely an area you want to check out if, for example, you're protecting a product.
Yeah, I think Sequence is the one we've done interviews with in the past, and we did one
Distill.
at Black Hat. Yeah,
and Distill has been who just was acquired, right? Distill
were they?
Networks. I believe they were acquired or merged or something.
Speaking of acquisitions,
speaking of acquisitions, Zingbox is one that you and I have talked about quite a bit behind the scenes. Me being a huge fan of IoT and IoT security and lack thereof, I'm a fan of all three of those. So Zingbox was, I thought, a really good IoT security company, and now they are being acquired by Palo Alto Networks.
Yeah, I mean, we've briefed with Zingbox for a couple years now. I mean, I think you and I have both met with them in previous Black Hats, not this last one because we were so busy. But really like their approach to IoT security, because what they were doing, which I think is required in this space, is they're analyzing the different protocols that IoT systems use. They're trying to understand and baseline that traffic, understand behavior, normal, abnormal, et cetera. And so you and I have been tracking these guys for a while. Zingbox has been on my radar screen since I think like 2016 or 17, right? So this is a great acquisition for them. I did some numbers. I went out to Aller and I said, okay, how much money did they take? What was their rough revenue stream? This is a $75 million acquisition. They took $22 million in funding. It's about a 3.5x return. Some people would say good. Other investors would say, I want at least 4%. Right. I still think it's a really good return for the investors at 3.5. Aller says $5 million in revenue. I don't know how real that is.
Yeah, but that's a crowdsourced number.
Yeah, it's a crowdsourced number. But even a 15x on revenue is well within lines, I think, for an acquisition, because I've seen a couple of these and been involved in a couple of these. That's a pretty good valuation number. So, look, I think this is a great acquisition. We could always ask our good friend Will Lin whether 3.5x is a good return or not a good return. Right, but it's better than equal or no return on your money. So,
and I think it's interesting that it's going to integrate with their firewall platform and Cortex as well. And Cortex is kind of their umbrella brand that they've created to bring in a lot of their acquisitions under a technology umbrella that is separate from the firewalls. Of course, there's integrations. But Palo Alto's made some really awesome acquisitions, this one included. So I think whether you're a Palo Alto customer or not, certainly I'm interested. In fact, it reminded me we need to brief with the Cortex team. I'm interested to see what they're doing, because they've acquired really great technologies. If they put them together in a way that really makes sense to solve people's problems, it should be something you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, Cortex is really building a broader enterprise security platform. Mm-hmm. That's really what they're building. I mean, Secdo and this acquisition fits in really
Secdo was
well.
Awesome technology. Awesome technology.
And then, then the stuff going after the application and container side of the house with Twistlock and
Twistlock was great technology.
PureSec. They're bringing a lot of technology acquisitions together under this umbrella, really building out a much broader enterprise security platform. I've heard, trying to go after aspects of Splunk and others. I mean, they're trying to build a much bigger enterprise security portfolio.
I mean, when we track vendors, we've got ones that we've briefed with and researched and ones that we like. And Palo Alto has swallowed up like 3 or 4 of the ones that we're like, we really like, they're doing cool stuff, right? So
yeah, they are.
That's the moral of that story. Vectra introduces a privilege-aware network detection and response solution.
So I'm trying to figure out how this actually works. Because it says both. Network, but it says privileged access. So I'm not quite sure how they're doing this. So I'm kind of curious. I didn't get into all the details. So I'm not quite sure how they actually do what they do. It sounds interesting. I just don't know how much value's here.
I've done some research on Vectra.ai is their site, and I've done a little bit of research into them, and I do like them as a vendor from what I've researched so far. So be curious to see what they're up to with respect to this announcement, especially, Matt, as sometimes we get press releases and we don't exactly know what it means, right?
Yeah, because when you think about privilege access, you're thinking identity, but then it says network detection and response. So which one is it, or how do the two come together to create the solution? That's what I'm unclear on. And what you actually need to make this work. So I'd love to know more of what they're doing, but I'm a little confused on the identity to network crossover here.
Mm-hmm. Quest has announced new features with its endpoint management system. Are you familiar with Quest products? They were sponsoring for, I think, a little while on the network before you joined, Matt. And quite frankly, I don't remember all of their different products and solutions. But this one sounded interesting. Endpoint management is key.
Yeah, and I think they were part of Dell. And then when Dell bought EMC/RSA, I think this is one of the spin-offs they did. They spun off the Sonic Wall Firewall. I think they spun off Quest. So I kind of lost track of them after that spin-off. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't have a good deep dive here on all the latest and greatest from Quest.
So they've got an endpoint management system and also a new release of a cloud mobile device manager, which simplifies mobile endpoint management as well. And I really think that's a key strategy. In fact, we've got some segments coming up talking about how attackers and pen testers alike are attacking endpoints that maybe don't live inside the corporate network. But a little teaser, many of this, and this is one large pen testing firm, right, Trusted Sec, saying a lot of them are still traditional VPN connected back into and part of Active Directory. Even if they're not VPN connected, the laptop's part of the domain, and they can do their reconnaissance off of that laptop, whether it's local or remote. So I think we had this conversation, Matt, last week on Enterprise Security Weekly, and therefore it was one of my first questions to Jason of Trusted Sec, who's coming on Paul Security Weekly this week or next week, I forget which. And I thought it was an interesting issue, really underscores the point of endpoint security, whether they're in-house or not. I mean, basically, they're making them part of the domain for management reasons, which makes sense. It was kind of a bummer for me too, because and many people listening know there are better ways than a traditional VPN, but that older technology, as we know, is not always replaced very quickly or easily.
Right.
Especially if you've got tens of thousands of users, you can't just snap your fingers and make them use a brand new, remote solution, right?
Yep. And so now you have this remote endpoint out there that is being used to infiltrate your network on the VPN connection back to your network.
Yep. So tune in to Paul Security Weekly for a discussion on that. SyncDog partners with Symantec. What is SyncDog? Matt, I thought they were similar to...
They're an ISV. They're called an independent software vendor for next generation mobile security and data loss prevention.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. And they're going to partner with Symantec on SEP, the Semantics Endpoint Protection. And so with all the things going on with Symantec, because I threw another Symantec article in here, is when you read an announcement like this, you have to clarify Symantec on the enterprise side or Symantec on the consumer side, because those two companies are about ready to split, right? And so you got to read down a little further to say, oh, this is going to integrate into SEP. Okay. Symantec already has DLP, but it must be the mobile aspects of this that is really the announcement here with SyncDog in going and looking at mobile security and the mobile data loss prevention side, which I don't think they're in the Symantec portfolio. So by integrating with SEP, now you can probably integrate your mobile endpoint data with your traditional endpoint data and kind of bring that all together. This all under the Symantec enterprise umbrella, which will probably soon be owned by Broadcom when that acquisition is complete.
Gotcha.
But the more interesting Symantec article, which I wanted to cover, is this potential rumor of the consumer business being acquired. So a couple weeks ago, actually a month or so ago, there was the rumors around Broadcom buying Symantec. And that deal kind of went sideways for a while. And I brought an interesting article from Axios. I sent it to you in email. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. But
no, I didn't see that.
As part of the due diligence, Broadcom decided not to buy all of Symantec. They decided only to buy the enterprise side of the business. Don't know why, but there was just some interesting maneuvers by Broadcom to really focus on the enterprise security side of the business, not the consumer side. Broadcom acquires the enterprise security side in the Symantec name for $10.7 billion. Still pending acquisition, but that's there. Now, the article that came up this week is there are a couple private equity firms that are looking to buy the rest of the Symantec portfolio on the consumer side. This is the Norton side and the LifeLock side of the house for potentially $16 billion. Now, let me put this in perspective to people. The combined Symantec was worth about $15 to $16 billion in the public market. They sold part of the business for 10.7, and they potentially will sell the other part of the business for $16 billion. That means somewhere around $26 to $27 billion. Symantec is valued way higher as two separate companies than they were as one big giant.
Someone figured that out a while ago and has been putting the wheels in motion for probably a year or more, right?
Well, I've been saying for years, Symantec had to figure out what they wanted to be when they grew up. Were they going to be an enterprise security company or a consumer-based security company? Because I thought it was really hard to manage both under a single portfolio.
When it gets that big,
look, you split it up, and now you're getting valuations that are more than what the combined company was worth.
Yep. Just a couple of other quick announcements. Ping Identity has launched an IPO. We covered that before, Matt?
No, so they're going out on the IPO roadshow, which I think is a great move for Ping. With some of the success of SailPoint and Okta on the identity side, I think the continued need for better security around the user and the identity side of the house, I think this is a great move for Ping. I think they'll probably do pretty well in the public market. I will be tracking this one closely. They are, again, a Denver, Colorado-based headquarter company. Andre and team have done a fantastic job over the years. I'm really looking forward to this one because I think having more public identity companies is really important as we think about app user data in the future. So I really like to see this IPO.
And
$14 to $16 is the current IPO price for anybody tracking.
Interesting. HackerOne has raised $36.4 million in a Series D funding round. I think really solidifying bug bounties are here to stay, and not just for this announcement, but they do have their place, and I think they've earned their niche in the market for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they're up to $110 million raised now, continuing to grow out the bug bounty program and the platform. The big question I still have, Paul, is what's the exit strategy for some of these big platforms? Can they continue to grow and thrive as a private company? Do they have to go IPO? Do they get acquired? I'm not quite sure the exit yet. I'm not quite sure how this plays out, but interesting to continue to watch and track.
Absolutely. And with that, we'll take a short break and come back with our interview for this episode. Steve Lobenstein from Core Security coming up next.